What happens when the angel created to carry out God's perfect justice begins to feel the weight of every life he takes? Before sin entered the world, before rebellion shook the heavens, there stood an angel whose name meant venom of God. Not because evil lived in him, but because he represented the side of God most feared, the side that punishes, destroys, and brings endings. If you're hungry to dive deeper into the untold stories of Scripture and discover truths that challenge what you thought you knew, hit that like button and subscribe to Bible Breakdown Hub. You're joining a community that isn't afraid to ask the hard questions about faith. His name was Samael. When God spoke the first words of creation into existence, Samael heard them clearly. His wings stretched wide, his presence struck like lightning across the heavens. He wasn't Gabriel, the gentle messenger bringing good news. He wasn't Raphael, the patient healer tending to wounds. Samael was the sword that never missed. He was God's law given form and breath, and God loved him for it. Samael did what no other angel could. He obeyed instantly, without question. When Michael paused to think, Samael already moved. When Gabriel searched for deeper meaning, Samael simply said, "This is what God wants." He executed divine justice, making heaven's perfect will a reality. In a realm filled with endless light and eternal worship songs, Samael's silence became his own form of praise. But inside that silence, something grew, something none of the other angels saw. Not even Michael. With every command he followed, with every judgment he delivered, Samael started feeling something angels were never designed to feel: the heaviness of what he destroyed. He watched entire groups of spirits fall silent because they stepped out of line. He saw the cries of lesser beings fade beneath his blade. And though God's will remained perfect, Samael began asking a dangerous question. Can something perfect still cause pain? He never spoke these words out loud, but that tiny crack, that small doubt, became the first tremor that would one day shake all of heaven. God made Samael the prosecutor of heaven, the one who examined the hearts of angels and humans alike. He walked among the heavenly ranks like a mirror, revealing every hidden flaw. While others sang praises, Samael listened carefully. While others worshipped, Samael watched, and he started noticing something that frightened him. Even light creates shadows, he once whispered to himself. Even pure things can hide wrong motives. He was both right and wrong, because the longer he stared into everyone else's shadows, the more he began seeing his own reflection staring back. There came a time when Samael stood directly before God's throne, not below it, not beside it, before it. Very few angels ever stood that close. He was the executor of heaven's decrees. When God spoke judgment, Samael's wings carried that sentence through all creation. He struck down corrupt stars. He silenced rebellious seraphim. He ended whatever stood against holiness. Without questions, without delay, he was power, he was order, he was fear, he was necessary. But here's the problem with being necessary. It makes you feel like you can't be replaced. And when you feel irreplaceable, you slowly start feeling equal to the one who made you. That's where his tragedy truly began. One day, though we don't know how time passed in heaven, maybe it was just a single breath, Samael watched God create something new, something fragile, something human. For the first time ever, Samael's voice shook. He looked at these creatures formed from dust and said to Michael, "We bleed because of our loyalty. We burn with holy fire. Yet he gives his own image to them." Michael smiled softly. "That's what love looks like, brother." But Samael couldn't answer. Love. That word made no sense in his language. Justice? Yes. Obedience? Absolutely. But love forgave what deserved punishment. Love turned judgment into mercy. And Samael couldn't understand mercy. So when the time came to test humanity, When heaven's court needed someone to accuse, God turned toward Samael. In that moment, Samael smiled, because this was exactly what he was made for. He became the prosecutor in heaven's courtroom, the voice that questioned human hearts before God, the one who declared, if they sin, they must die. If they disobey, they must fall. He was perfect for the job, cold, exact, loyal. He thought he was serving faithfully, but he was changing, because every time he condemned someone, every time he spoke judgment, a voice inside him started whispering, "You're enjoying this." Was it pride? Was it corruption? Or was it simply the echo of the very role God gave him, divine anger made conscious and alive? That's where the real story begins, not with rebellion, not with jealousy, but with an angel who loved justice so intensely that he forgot what mercy felt like. And maybe that's what broke him. Maybe that's what made God whisper one day, "Samael, enough." But how do you tell an angel whose entire existence is built on judgment to stop judging? He was the storm God created. But once born, even storms stopped listening to their maker. Now I need to ask you something, because this is where things get dark. If God made Samael knowing what he would become, did God create his own enemy? Or was Samael simply the side of God we were never meant to see? Heaven has no night. But there was a silence that felt like darkness whenever Samael entered the court. The other archangel said that silence was reverence, but deep down, everyone knew the truth. It was fear. Samael was the voice of heaven's courtroom. When a soul was weighed, his tone echoed through eternity. When angels erred, his hand carried the sentence. He didn't shout, he didn't rage, he simply spoke, and all creation bent to his verdict. The angels called him God's prosecutor, and God himself said, "Let every word of justice pass through Samael." At first, Samael served without a single mistake. He believed judgment was a form of love, that to correct and punish was to make things pure again. But over time, the fire of righteousness inside him began to twist. Each trial left pieces behind, fragments of anger, resentment, grief. He saw betrayal everywhere. He saw hypocrisy even among the holy. He noticed how angels envied one another, how even light could cast dark shadows. He began noticing that while he carried out God's commands, the others sang. They praised. They rested. He was always working, always destroying, always ending. And one day Samael whispered, not out loud, not even in open rebellion, but inside his own heart, "If none of them can execute justice like I can, doesn't that make me the truest servant of all?" It was a small thought, a dangerous one. But thoughts are seeds, and in heaven, even one seed can crack eternity wide open. When the first humans sinned, heaven's court gathered, the air trembled with divine light. The throne radiated brightness no human eye could survive. And standing before it, wings spread, eyes burning with authority, Samael waited. He already knew the verdict. The soul that sins must die. He repeated it over and over in his mind, ready to deliver it with perfect, cold obedience. But then God paused. It was the first time Samael had ever seen the Creator hesitate. He looked up and saw mercy in God's eyes. "They will live," God said. "My plan is greater than their fall." Samael froze. His wings stiffened. His flame flickered. "Live," he whispered. "After betrayal," the angels murmured. Michael bowed his head. Gabriel sighed with relief. But Samael clenched his hands until sparks fell from them like hot embers. He stepped forward. "My Lord, your word is law. If law isn't kept, is it still holy?" He wasn't defying God. Not yet. He was questioning. He wanted to understand. But the question itself cracked something sacred. God looked at him, and in that gaze was love, the kind that burns worse than fire. "You were made for judgment," God said softly. But you don't yet understand mercy. Mercy, that word again. The word that had no place in Samael's vocabulary, the word that shattered his certainty. He bowed his head, but as he turned away, an unthinkable emotion filled his chest. Jealousy. Why should these fragile creatures made of dust receive what he, the eternal executor, never could? Forgiveness, compassion, a second chance. That day, Samael walked heaven's corridors in silence. The light dimmed around him. The choirs grew quiet. Michael followed him once, asking gently, "Brother, what troubles you?" Samael's reply was calm, too calm. "I'm troubled by mercy, Michael. It forgives what must be removed." Michael looked at him with sorrow. Mercy doesn't erase justice, it redeems it. But Samael only smiled faintly. Then redemption is a loophole, not a law. And he walked away. Weeks passed. The court continued. But Samael's loyalty began to shift, not outwardly but internally. He still carried out God's commands. He still punished rebellion. But he began enjoying the sound of fear in those he judged. He started believing his justice was purer than God's compassion. He began seeing himself not as a servant, but as the balance, the one who could correct what even the Creator in his mercy had let slip. There's a point in every angel's story where obedience becomes identity, and identity becomes pride. And pride was the whisper that unmade heaven once before. But Samael didn't rebel yet, not openly. He simply tightened his grip on justice until even mercy began looking like corruption in his eyes. One night, or what heaven calls the still hour, when creation sleeps, Samael stood at the edge of the firmament. Beneath him, the mortal world shimmered. He saw humans laughing, sinning, loving, repenting. He whispered, "They break every law, and yet you smile on them. I destroy for you, and you look away." Then he raised his face toward the throne above and said, "Tell me, my Lord, do you still control the fire you placed in me?" No answer came, only silence. But silence can be dangerous, because silence feels like permission. From that night forward, Samael began overseeing the destroying angels differently. He gave orders before heaven spoke. He punished before judgment was confirmed. And when Michael confronted him, Samael simply said, "I act as I was created to, I execute." But his eyes were changing. The light in them flickered, not from holy fire, but from something else, something human, rage. Tell me, what would you do if the purpose you were created for, justice, started feeling like the very reason you were being pushed aside? Would you stop serving? Or would you go further until even God himself had to stop you? Because that's what happened next. The angel of judgment crossed a line so deep it made heaven tremble. There's a moment before every storm when the air goes still. That stillness, that quiet tension before everything breaks, that's what heaven felt like the day Samael changed forever. He still stood among the archangels. His light still shone. But something behind his eyes was different. It was no longer peace. It was pressure held back in silence. Heaven had faced rebellion before, but this wasn't that. This was something quieter, colder, and far more dangerous. Because Samael didn't rage against God, he simply began acting without waiting for his word. The first death. The story says there was a time when the first human soul died. No angel knew what death was, not even Samael, until God whispered, "Now it begins." And when he said that, Samael stepped forward. Not Michael, not Gabriel. Samael. He asked no questions. He spread his wings, black fire spiraling through the feathers, and descended into the world. The earth was still new, the air was heavy with creation's warmth, and there before him lay the frail body of a man, motionless, silent, breathless. The other angels watched from above, unsure what to do, but Samael moved with precision. He touched the man's face. His hand glowed white, then gold, then red. And in that instant, the soul rose from the body like smoke, trembling, confused, afraid. The first death had come, and Samael had become its messenger. He carried that soul to heaven's gate, and when he laid it before the throne, he waited for God's voice. But God said nothing. Only silence filled the court. A holy, terrifying silence. Finally, Samael whispered, "It is done." Judgment carried out. Still nothing. So he looked up and said carefully, but with something sharp in his voice, "Is this not my purpose?" Then came the reply, not in thunder, not in rage, but in quiet sorrow. "Yes, Samael. But death is not destruction. Death is transition. You've turned the gate into a grave." The courtroom trembled. Samael's light dimmed. He wanted to argue. But how do you argue with God? So he bowed. Yet inside, a single thought began to burn. "Then you made me wrong." He didn't speak it out loud, but heaven heard it, because thoughts like that echo deeper than words ever could. After that day, the name Samael took on new meaning. The angels began calling him the Angel of Death. It was meant as honor, but it felt like exile. While the others sang and created, Samael alone descended to the places where life ended. He became a shadow passing through battlefields, deserts, cities. Everywhere life faded, his presence followed, solemn, silent, cold. He never disobeyed. He never lied. He never refused his duty. But he began to change in how he felt about it, because he saw too much. He saw every tear, every scream, every hand reaching for mercy that never came. He saw children die, kings fall, lovers separated, and the more he saw, the more he realized something that terrified him. If this is justice, why does it feel so cruel? One night, if heaven has nights, Samael stood alone by the borders of creation. The light of the firmament glowed beneath him, and he whispered into the void, "Tell me, Lord, am I still your servant, or have I become your punishment?" The stars didn't answer. They only reflected his fire, a fire that no longer looked holy. And for the first time since the dawn of existence, Samael cried. His tears fell through the skies like comets, blazing trails of sorrow that the angels mistook for falling stars. Michael found him there, kneeling in the ashes of worlds he had purified. "Brother," Michael said softly, "why are you here alone?" Samael didn't look up. "Because I touch what no one else dares to touch. Because I see what no one else should see." "Then stop looking," Michael whispered. "I can't," Samael said. "It's all I was made for." He turned his eyes toward the mortal realm. Below, a plague swept across the earth, a wave of death, unseen, unstoppable. The cries rose into heaven like smoke. Michael looked down and asked, "Will you go again?" Samael didn't answer. He just spread his wings and descended. But this time something was different. He didn't wait for God's command. He didn't ask for permission. He simply acted. And when he was done, 1,000 souls rose. Not one, thousands. The sky itself darkened from their cries. That was the day the angels began to whisper, "Samael moves before the word." He no longer listens, he decides. And though no lightning struck him down, heaven itself began to grieve. Because an angel who acts without command becomes something more dangerous than a rebel. He becomes a god in his own mind. When Samael returned to the court, the throne was quiet. The air was heavier than usual, the kind of silence that feels like disappointment. God said, "You went before my voice again." Samael bowed. The sentence was clear. "I only hurried the unavoidable." "You don't hurry what I haven't spoken," the Lord replied. "Then speak faster," Samael said softly, almost trembling, and heaven gasped. Every seraph stopped singing. Even Michael flinched. because that wasn't obedience anymore. That was pride wrapped in pain. God rose, and when he spoke, every star flickered. Samael, you were my hand of justice, but now you've become the hand of your own will. Samael lifted his face. His eyes burned with something halfway between love and defiance. Then who am I, if not your justice? And for the first time, God looked at him not as a servant, but as a tragedy. You are what happens when judgment forgets love. From that day, Samael was no longer allowed to stand before the throne. He wasn't cast out. Not yet, but he was set apart. He walked the edges of heaven, half in light, half in shadow. And in the dark places between the stars, a whisper began to follow him. A voice, not from heaven, but from somewhere deeper. You were right to question, it said. Mercy is weakness. Justice is strength. Samael knew the voice. He didn't want to answer, but he did. Who are you? The reply came like a hiss, soft and ancient. The one who once asked the same question. And that's how Samael met Lucifer. Not as enemy, not as ally, but as two sides of the same wound. If Lucifer fell because of pride, Samael would fall because of purpose. And that makes his story so much more tragic, because he didn't fall to oppose God. He fell trying to understand him. Now let me ask you, if you were created to carry out God's anger, but your heart began to feel mercy, would you be holy for resisting it, or damned for caring? Because that question, that single unbearable question, is what will destroy Samael next. There was one day, one single moment in eternity, when Samael's heart broke beyond repair. It began with a whisper, a divine decree, a command like so many before it. But this time it wasn't a nation, it wasn't a king, it was a child. A boy no older than 10, born under a cursed bloodline, doomed by his father's sins. Heaven's judgment had spoken. The bloodline must end, and it was Samael who was sent. He descended from the heavens in silence. His wings, once silver, now darkened at the edges by centuries of duty, folded around him like a storm. He found the boy sleeping beside his mother, their small home flickering with the light of a dying candle. The child's breath was steady, innocent, peaceful. Samael stood there, holding the decree in his hand, a seal of fire that only he could read. The command was absolute, but as he raised his hand to fulfill it, something inside him shattered. He saw not a sinner, not a threat, but a life that had just begun. A child who didn't yet know what it meant to hate or to disobey. The mother stirred, opening her eyes, and for a moment she saw him, the angel of death. And she didn't scream. She whispered, trembling, "Please, not my son." Those words, simple, human, desperate, pierced Samael deeper than any blade. He froze, his hand trembled, his wings unfurled in agony. And for the first time in all creation, Samael, the angel of perfect obedience, disobeyed. He tore the decree in half. The heavens roared, the stars dimmed, the light of the throne flickered. A voice thundered across the universe, "Samael!" And in that voice was grief, disappointment, and unyielding authority. Samael fell to his knees, wings shaking, eyes filled with tears that burned like molten silver. "My lord," he cried, "have mercy. The boy has done nothing." But the voice answered, "Justice is not yours to question." Lightning split the sky. The boy's life was taken, not by Samael's hand, but by divine command itself. And in that moment, Samael screamed, not in rebellion, but in heartbreak, because he finally realized mercy had no place in his existence. He looked to the heavens and whispered, "Then why did you give me a heart?" And from that day, Samael changed. He still carried out judgment, but the light in his eyes was gone. He no longer looked at humans as souls to guide or condemn. He saw them as fragile, tragic beings, creatures doomed by the same God who made them, and deep within him, something darker began to form. It wasn't hatred, not yet. It was pain, pain that twisted and deepened until it became something unrecognizable. And pain has a way of attracting darkness. That was when he came. Lucifer, the morning star, the once bright prince who had fallen not long before. He found Samael in the silence between heaven and earth, wings folded, face cast down in despair. Lucifer said softly, "You see it now, don't you?" The flaw in his perfection. Samael didn't answer. Lucifer stepped closer. "You carry out his wrath, but he hides his hands. You kill in his name, and yet they call you evil. Doesn't that ache inside you?" Samael's jaw tightened. "Do not tempt me, morning star. I am not like you." Lucifer smiled, faint and knowing. "No, you're not. You still believe he loves you. But tell me, if he truly loved you, why would he make you the face of death?" That question lodged itself deep in Samael's mind. He didn't respond, and Lucifer didn't press further. He simply turned to leave and whispered, "One day, brother, you'll understand." And Samael did. Because over the centuries, as humanity continued to sin and suffer, he watched them pray to God for mercy and receive none. He watched them die under decrees he had no choice but to deliver. And the more he obeyed, the more he felt like a weapon, not an angel. And so he began to ask the question that would mark the start of his fall. If justice destroys the innocent, is it still divine? He began to wander beyond his orders, questioning judgments, hesitating to strike, intervening in ways heaven never permitted, and soon whispers began to spread among the angels. Some called him merciful, others called him dangerous. Heaven watched, hell waited, and Samael stood between both, torn, broken, and no longer certain which side truly served righteousness. Can you imagine carrying out justice so long that you forget what love feels like? Can you imagine being hated by the world and feared by heaven for doing what you were created to do? Samael didn't fall in flames like Lucifer. He fell in silence, through heartbreak, not pride. But heartbreak can turn even the purest light into shadow. Samael's fall wasn't born of pride. It was born of heartbreak. He wasn't trying to take God's throne. He was trying to understand God's heart. And maybe that's why his story cuts deeper than Lucifer's, because Lucifer fell by reaching too high. But Samael fell by feeling too much. He became the outcast angel, the one who still serves justice but with tears in his eyes, the one who delivers death but whispers prayers for the souls he takes, the one both heaven and hell fear, because neither fully owns him. They call him the angel of death. But maybe he's something greater, the proof that even in judgment, compassion can still burn, like a dying star that refuses to go out. So I'll ask you this: if you were Samael, torn between obedience and mercy, would you still follow orders? Would you still call it love if love was the reason you were cast out? Samael's story reminds us that sometimes the hardest walk of faith isn't choosing between good and evil. It's learning to hold justice and mercy together in the same hand, just as God does. The tension Samael felt is one we all experience when life doesn't make sense, when God's ways challenge our understanding. But unlike Samael, we have the gift of seeing the full picture of God's love through Christ, where justice and mercy meet at the cross. If this journey through Scripture's hidden stories moved you, hit that like button and subscribe to Bible Breakdown Hub. We're exploring the depths of God's Word together, uncovering truths that strengthen your faith and deepen your relationship with Him.